Just says, oh, there we go. Now we're live. Hey, everybody. Welcome to COVID Convos, the gay edition, according to our plan. I mean, it's the gay edition every edition, really, if we're going to be honest, but here we are. We're going to introduce ourselves as we do, and then we'll just kind of carry on. So if folks want to have any important homosexual questions, please just pop them in the comment section, and we'll do our best to answer them. And or else also, COVID questions if you have any of those. Hi everyone. Hello friends. How's everyone doing? What's going on? Like, can we introduce ourselves and just be like, here's what's happening in our lives? Get started. Oh my God, Levi's literally like my video.
Yeah.
That was a statement.
Levi's way of saying no.
Seriously. Oh my God. Adrian, do you want to start?
Hi, I'm Adrian. Thanks for having me back. You might know me from season 1, episode 5. I was on before. I'm so happy to be back. I waited to say that for a month and a half. I was super excited. So I'm the director of housing at the Main Street Project. And I'm always, always so thankful to be invited to these conversations. How am I doing? Yesterday, I was a lot better because of the weather. Today, I was feeling up yesterday and good, and things were feeling good. And then you woke up to that rain today, and I was like, well, it was short-lived. So, but trying to gear up for better weather and so much going on at work. So thanks for having me.
How about you, Zoma? How are you?
I'm great. I'm doing well. It's good to see all of your faces. Hoping everyone is navigating the start to the week as well as possible. I would echo what Adrian said about the weather yesterday. It was really nice to have all that sun. It was warm, and I could picture myself, walking out in the world in like a t-shirt. Now I'm not that person. I see people out in shorts, and I commend them for that. It's a very Manitoban thing to do, but it's never going to be me until we hit, higher temperatures. So that was a nice shift yesterday. And what was a nice shift for me is going back right now to introduce myself properly. Sorry, I didn't do that. I'm Uzoma Asaguera. I'm a registered psychiatric nurse. I'm also an MLA. It's a member of the Legislative Assembly of Manitoba, and I represent the constituency of Union Station. Always thrilled to be here and talk about public health and COVID and how we can all navigate this pandemic in a better way and support one another in communities. And so thanks.
Awesome. And then how about you, Levi? How are you? What's new?
I have to cough. So as soon as you started talking to me, I was like, okay, I'm gonna cough. I'm fine. I mean, I've been better. I've been worse. Things are okay. This week has been weird in terms of being a pet parent. I lost, one of my pets died, and then another pet died, and then we lost our cat. And I was like, I'm the worst. I can't trust nothing for me. But I got over it. Our cat came back, and that's what helped me get over it. But other than that, it's just
finish that story, Levi. You can't skip. There's too many.
No, actually, the cat didn't come back. Feather found the cat, and then we coaxed
Feather. Good job.
Yeah, so Feather is the cat savior today, and he stunk, so I had to spray him with cat cologne stuff. But other than that, things have been bananas, and entering into this change of season is going to be really weird. It's there's lots of things to be hopeful about, and then there's lots of things that are going to require some introspection and all that kind of stuff. And I'm just I'm not here for that part. I felt like we've done enough introspection for the last year. I'm I don't want to do any more introspection. I just want to do gay shit and have fun. But that's me.
Awesome. Yeah, it's so hard. I feel the same way, or I'm just I just want to go out. I want to see people in person. I feel really I miss the community more than I have this entire pandemic. That chunk of really cold weather moving into this, and now this tiny glimmer. It's that moment where it's still fucking winter, but you're like, maybe I could get through this winter. Like that moment requires like looking hot and going and seeing other hot queers out in the world. And so it's a real hard moment in time to be like, actually, we have to be like, we have to maintain our discipline. And like, just because vaccines are rolling out doesn't actually change much of anything really in lots of ways. Like it does change things, of course. But, thinking through all of that. Anyways, so yeah, I'm Margaret and I'm a nurse and I work mostly in harm reduction and like mostly do sex and drugs, as many of you know, both personally and professionally. And I just am here to mostly just to hang out and chat with you guys and hear what other folks who are on the social media platforms have to say about all the things that are kind of going on. And yeah, so that's why I'm here today. And we are missing two folks. We're missing Marsha, who is like got her second Moderna dose today and then had an excellent reassuring moment in time where she was sore, which means that she's having a good reaction to her vaccine, but it also meant she was like, going to bed, y'all. And so she is taking a wee break this week. And then Karen was not able to join us today either. So we're like, well, we can do whatever the heck we want then. And so here we all are. Uzoma's like, watch yourselves. Don't worry. I didn't know you were coming, so I will just like tone down my business. It'll be fine. But I don't know if we want to do like a quick kind of like what's happening in COVID world for you guys right now. What the heck is actually going on? Because it is like things are changing fast, I feel like, personally. Does anyone want to start that conversation off?
I can start that off if it's okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, over the past couple of weeks, we've seen really big announcements in regards to vaccine availability in Canada. And so we've seen now 4 vaccines that have been approved for distribution in Canada. And I think on a positive note, what that does and what I've seen and heard from folks is kind of instills a little bit of hope that, hopefully the vaccine can be distributed more quickly and become more accessible. And folks are really already, I'm hearing many people talking more and more about, all of the things they want to be able to do when they get the vaccine and what that means for communities. And I think that that's really important and productive conversation to have. A couple of the things that also come up, however, are who gets to access those vaccines and how are we looking at making sure that we're eliminating barriers to accessing vaccine, especially given this news around data finally being shared in Manitoba. So many months later after the government promised it would be released, we finally have the disaggregated race data. And we know that Black and Indigenous and communities of color, like other jurisdictions in the country, are disproportionately affected by COVID-19. So when we talk about vaccines and supports and all of these things, for me anyway, in my role as someone who really cares passionately about public health, and also as now a legislator, it's thinking about how do we apply the information that we have and make sure that access is actually equitable and is meeting the needs of folks who are really impacted by this pandemic. So I think those are conversations that I really, really dig into and that I really want to see some accountability around. And I really encourage folks to continue sharing their thoughts and feelings and concerns around that because it's important. It's important in terms of how we move forward.
Yeah, well, and I think what is I don't know, have you heard anything, any of you, about how that data should be influencing the ways in which people were making decisions around vaccine distribution? And so have we heard I haven't seen the thing that I'm hoping to see from our public health officials and from our government around, releasing data like that is super fucking important, and they're a day late and a dollar short. And also we really need folks to use that data to appropriately. So I don't know. Has anyone heard it? I don't know. I'm anyway.
No, I think what the thing is one of those situations where it's like we already knew this and this just confirmed it, so we don't actually need to change anything because our plans already addressed it. And I think that's how they're going to explain themselves out of it, and that's how policy is going to be made. It's going to be like, well, this is only just confirming what we already suspected, and but that's not saying that what they were doing, that I think what they were doing in the first place was equitable in any way. It's just kind of, it's not gonna, I don't think it's gonna change anything, and I don't think they're ever gonna, I don't think this particular regime is gonna use that data for anything other than just stay the course.
But this seems like the kind of thing that what is her name? Who's doing it? Joss. Oh my gosh, I can't remember.
Dr. Reimer.
Like Dr. Reimer, Dr. Reimer's leading the vaccine team. Like I'm looking to Brent to see like both like those two guys could be like they've made choices around how we're rolling out vaccinations in Indigenous communities that have made sense and have helped not fully address the inequities, obviously, but at least have touched on it. So what's the diff, So I think even if this government, even if our politicians aren't going to be speaking to it or integrating into their public health processes, I think it makes tons of sense for our public health officials to be given what we know about this, and this, and given our prior engagement on looking at, health inequities in racialized communities, in particular with Indigenous people, then we're going to do this, and this based on that. It's actually quite a logical, right? Don't you think so? So I'm we're both healthcare people. This is a logical thing you do. You get new evidence, you make some adjustments based on actually a super simple thing that you've already done once.
For sure. But I think what's important is that the First Nations pandemic response team is First Nations led.
I know.
These are public health experts, First Nations leadership that are really doing tremendous work around start to finish through this pandemic. And what's interesting is that when you think about public health and public health expertise, you would think, oh yeah, of course, this data, you saw what was happening in other jurisdictions, you should have been able to prepare for this. No different than addressing the second wave here in long-term care. We saw what happened in other jurisdictions. We should have been able to plan and resource appropriately. However, there's a reason in my mind that this data took so long to be released. Manitoba was the first, if not one of the first jurisdictions in the country to start collecting this race-based disaggregated data. And yet we become one of the last to actually release any of it to the public. And, in my mind, what's evident to me is that it's actually indicative of the government's unwillingness to appropriately and adequately resource areas that, if they were to provide that information transparently out of the gate, they would be pushed to do so. So you wait months and months and months, 10 months later to release this information when a lot of these harms that could have been mitigated have already taken place, and then statements like, well, we'll put out information in other languages, as if that is the reason why communities are disproportionately impacted by COVID-19. We already know the answers to the questions as to why some communities are more negatively impacted by this pandemic. And if we don't address the root issues of those problems, of those outcomes rather, we're not going to see any of the positive changes that we want to in the short term in terms of the pandemic or otherwise. And so I think it was kind of the delay in this information being shared, speaking specifically to government, I think is just due in part to them wanting to avoid having to be accountable to adequately resourcing and answering questions to communities that are most impacted.
Yeah, and be accountable too, right? If you can avoid things, you don't have to be accountable. And so the questions that we're asking on a tiny little COVID convo are things that we should have been asked months and months ago, so we could actually have gotten ahead of the game a little bit. Anyway. Ooh. So Uzoma, so what do we need to do? Is this telling our parents strongly worded letters? Are we at that? What do you need from the community?
I've been seeing a lot of strongly worded letters and folks in community pushing not only the government but pushing opposition as well, right? Pushing folks like myself to ask better questions, harder questions, demand more accountability, and that's appreciated. We need to hear from folks in terms of what their ideas are, what their concerns are, how they think we should be articulating these issues is really important. And this past weekend, for me, what comes to mind in thinking about how do we address these things, I think about different organizations that do a tremendous job of consistently applying pressure and really personalizing stories and experiences and making sure that no matter what, they're visible. And not that I want to change the direction of this conversation, but I want to acknowledge and give a shout out to the Overdose Awareness Manitoba folks who held a vigil this Saturday. It was March 6th at the legislature, and lit candles and had 259 folks represented in terms of those who have died due to overdose or substance-related issues since from January 2020 to September, I believe is the data. I've got it correct.
6 months.
9 months.
Yeah.
9 months.
Yeah.
Okay. So, I mean, it's folks like that, right, who are consistently applying that pressure that we need to continue to amplify and to have ways for them to share their stories and experiences and to humanize the impacts of decision making at a government level, because it's real. And the inaction, people suffer the consequences of government inaction, and we have to all be accountable to that. So I just wanted to acknowledge those folks and the work that they are doing and the efforts they made over the weekend, because it doesn't go unnoticed.
Well, and it's like, and that work of honoring the people that we've lost too is actually a really important part, because it's so big. It's so I mean, I don't know, Adrian and Levi, how it's just been it's been a freaking nightmare, because we're doing double duty on epidemics, right? We're doing we have to deal with COVID, but we're also dealing with people overdosing everywhere and not having access to things. I was just talking to somebody today about, so naloxone was unscheduled. So for a really long time, you could only get naloxone if you talk to a nurse. So only nurse could give it to somebody to take away. And so we unscheduled naloxone, which means that people can access it who don't have to be nurse. So an outreach worker could give it out, etc. And that's good, but we haven't actually done anything about increasing the funding for naloxone to be able to actually flood our communities with naloxone. We should not. Every single week people are coming into work and do harm reduction supply distribution and are where do I get a kit? How can we get a kit? And it shouldn't be. It should feel like people are overloaded in naloxone, and naloxone isn't the answer. Actually, drug policy that is not bullshit is the answer. But in the meantime, we want our people that we love to live. I don't know if this is ringing true for you guys too or not, but it is a real deal anyway.
So much to unpack. Oh, so much to unpack. So I think when Uzoma said, the initiatives need to be led by people who are most affected, even to see Marsha at the table presenting as a leader in the community, we're a year into COVID, right? And so even that visibility of her leadership is after a year into COVID, not from the beginning. So that's been really interesting and twofold for me. I want to yell and cheer and be so that's what we need, and that's who needs to guide us in these. And when I say us, I mean as non-Indigenous agencies and people. But that's a year later than having that visual and strong voice at the table. So that's been really interesting. Levi and I are invited to conversations about vaccine rollout for marginalized populations, specific to unsheltered or people who are living episodically homeless, whatever the words we're going to use are today. But there's still no plan. And there's still no, and we talk all about the things when Levi said, we already know what needs to be done. We know we have to take services to people, these themes of how we just meet people where they're at in general. No different for the vaccine, no different for naloxone, no different but yet the systems we're still designing are very in the box, institutionalized. So we're all at the table sharing the same information that we share every time somebody says, how do we go meet people where they are? How do we take these to increase awareness, to provide education, to that harm reduction approach? But yet there's still no, you're getting your clinic on this day, or you have access to your community health center through Ab Health or Mount Carmel at these times. So route people there. I still we're in that meetings about meetings phase about how to roll it out, about what more to do, and yet people are continuing to be affected with COVID. So I think, as we come out of the cold weather and, we want to feel better and we want to feel like there's hope, we're still going to these places and these meetings where, and we better remember to have a lived experience table. Well, those are people who are going to tell us how they're going to get the vaccine. Like, we're just the agents to help with that. But so, it's all the same thematic things that we talk about when we want to bring services to anybody anywhere. The vaccine is no different. So we already got the tools. We already know what needs to be done. People who are using drugs and experiencing COVID and living unsheltered are telling us, hey, this is no different.
Yeah.
This is what we need. And we're conveying that. And yet they're still, well, we'll have another consultation. Well, we'll wait to hear. So there's no movement on some of those pieces for us, which I think in the sector we find really frustrating still.
Well, and it's unacceptable actually, because there's been movement on things all through this entire pandemic. And the goddamn truth is that people just don't want to actually pay attention. And so I think like this stuff that you're talking about, Adrian, about, we just have the same thematic things and the same conversations. And like a part of me is like, we just need to try a thing. Like we just need to do it, And so that's the piece where I'm like, I just want like you and Levi to be able to be like, okay, here's the spots that we're sending people. Here's when we're coming. Like, get ready. So either you prepare for us to be here or come anyway, like, I think like, and it's just, and like, not to be shitty. Like, I know that people are working their super hardest. And also like, we want to like actually reinforce things like health equity and thinking about human rights and what people need, then we actually also need to just like do the thing, So, and I think, and it's not enough to like, not in a mean way. Like we actually also have to model that, because the way that you work, the way that Levi works, the way that like this group of us that come together, the way that we work is actually is important to understand. And it actually takes some like, you have to kind of see it sometimes. I think sometimes people hear us talk and they're like, yes, but like can't actually, like the point A to point Z is a bit more of a question mark, And so like, I think about like the kind of mutual aid stuff that's happening, the collective care stuff. And like, I actually think we need to like specifically say how we're doing it, there's a group of like 10 people use drugs who distributed 50,000 needles in 5 months out of the studio that I work at. Like they just did that thing, but it's like, but people don't have a sense of how they actually pulled it off, even though it's literally like you just show up and do the thing. But I do think that's kind of having those moments where we're like, here's what we mean. Like, here's an example of what's really working. And I think about Uzoma and your constituents and the places where people are doing the thing, where it's like, we need to also demonstrate in some, like, and not that it's our jobs to do that, but like, honestly, let's be real. So like, how do we actually get to the next spot? I don't know. Oh, you guys are getting me all riled up today.
Well, I think it's interesting because, I'm very, like everyone else, like I think most people, very grateful for the efforts of public health and for their expertise. And, they've been working flat out since before the pandemic reached Manitoba. And that's an important thing to recognize. And I think it's also important to recognize that, there are pressures placed on public health, whether they're political. I can't really speak to that because I'm not in those rooms. And so I'm not going to be too presumptuous, but we do know that there are pressures placed on public health when you strip away resources. And when you strip away resources and other aspects of the system, right? And so to me, it's about being honest and about being cognizant of the impacts of that decision making and that stripping away of resources in certain areas and ultimately the cumulative impacts of that. And what that looks like in terms of who informs decision making and how decision making is or isn't able to actually draw on the expertise that exist in communities. Like, we have to be able to support pathways for that, and we have to be able to recognize the expertise in communities as expertise, right? And not just me and not just us. Like, it has to be something, a value that is pervasive throughout all levels in order for it to really make an impact. So I think the more we talk about it, the more we keep these conversations going. But I hope that we can continue. That we can continue. I hope that we can press people who really aren't having these conversations to do so. And I know I've had some really interesting and challenging conversations with people in the last couple of weeks. Folks who are identified as very conservative, who have reached out because they have seen some things that they're like, I'm not comfortable with this. I didn't know how to ask this question. I do want to ask this question. It's going to come out all kinds of messed up, but I'm asking. And I feel like sometimes we have to be, like my job anyway, it's a responsibility to have those conversations. But I do think there's an opportunity here to ensure that we're moving this conversation aggressively and assertively in the right direction. And we really do have to demand that the folks who need to be listening and participating get to it.
And yeah, I don't want to come off like somebody who's like, I'm not just angry, like I'm not just angry about, I am angry, to be clear, but I am like, and also I'm aware that people, like, I do believe in my heart that they're like, most of us are trying to get shit going, and I appreciate Uzoma, that like constant, steady, like I'm sure people who are listening also appreciate this, like you are like a constant, steady, like, yes, we need to have these feelings and we need to hold people accountable and also do it in a way that is that actually challenges people to do the right thing, like where it's where people are moved by the way, move to do the right thing. And I think like that is a really hard thing, like nuance to kind of get. And like, I almost never do. Usually I'm just like, I work at it, but it is. So anyways, I appreciate that about the ways that you've approached COVID and also overdose in this like weird time. Because also none of us are super regulated. Like we're mostly dysregulated because we're in a crisis. And so it is just like having those moments, especially with you guys, to be like remind us how to do this in a way where we actually get people engaged in a way that makes them feel moved to think about what's going on and to do something different. So anyways, I appreciate it.
Well, and isn't that kind of the essence of harm reduction too, right? That continual discussion, that continual opportunity to create the awareness. And although we feel frustrated inside around how many times we have to have the conversation, like Uzoma, you said it yourself, like people are reaching out to you who you may not have had that conversation with. And so that's another pair of ears that translates into another vote, that translates into another like change movement. So for me, we have to keep having those.
Yeah. And that humility is hard. Like it's hard to like, it is hard for me to go through COVID with like humbly, like with some humility for what's happening for other people. Cause I am just like, especially when you see people you love be hurt and like not be able to access the care that they need or die, like all of that stuff makes it very hard to like hold on to a little bit of that, like that wanting still to connect. And so I'm so grateful for people in my life like you guys who are help remind me that it's still a thing we can do while we're also raging and furious and so sad about the people that we've lost. Like it's just been a really shitty freaking time in lots of ways. So anyways, anything else that you want to weigh in on? What are you guys excited about? Are you excited about shit these days?
I'd really like to ask Levi what's going on in that tank. There's a lot of activity in that tank behind you, and I'm curious if there's been additions or what exactly.
So here's the thing about being a new fish keeper. You're kind of bad at it when you start, and it really makes you question your ability to care for things. So there's always new additions. A lot of the times, like with fish, sometimes you can't control what happens to them because you don't actually know where they're sourced. You hope that they're sourced ethically, and you hope that they're sourced in a environment that like makes them kind of healthy. But sometimes there's not. So there's always new additions, but it's been relatively stable for the last 3 months. And the only thing that I've added recently is I had to move some guppies over. So Rowan and I had a group of guppies that we've just been transporting from tank to tank because they inbreed so profusely. So we always end up with all these guppies. And I'm just like, well, I'm just putting them in the big tank. And if they live, they live. And if they die, they die. Because that's just nature, bitch. Just get into it. But yeah, so that's what's happening in this tank. So this is I don't know. I don't have a favorite tank, actually. I like this one a lot because there's so much happening and it's really peaceful and it lets me it's a nice place to smudge. Because then you get grounded and you get to watch things you get to watch creatures kind of navigate a really enclosed space. And I think somebody who's lived urban most of their life, that really resonates with me in a lot of ways.
Can we talk about the giant, weird, retro telethon event that just happened for Sunshine House for Second Levi? Can we?
No.
You're like, I don't want to.
It's on our Facebook page. Go watch it.
Oh my God.
If you have questions, just ask questions. Only send us your positive feedback because it's already done and you can't do nothing about it.
From the bottom of our queer hearts, you got us through that day. That was I can wait for my Doctor Who mug to come in the mail. I made that joke 30 times and anybody who's never seen a telethon was like, that's not really funny, Adrian. And I was like, well, you've not watched Prairie Public Television. And
seriously.
I thoroughly, from my nostalgic queer heart, love that. So thank you guys, all of you.
And I'm so
I literally did nothing. I showed up. I just kind of put information on the right paths when things kind of went off. But I didn't have to do much work. It was pretty nice. It was exciting. It was super fun, and I'm so grateful for everyone who dreamed of it. And then we're just gonna make it happen, and it's gonna happen regardless. And they did. And I was like, this is the most Sunshine House thing possible. This is that's what it's all about. It's
of all time.
This is our idea. Let's just go with it. And it's okay, let's go with it. Go have fun.
What a freaking gift, in a time when play and joy is kind of hard to track down in some ways, I have never been more grateful that Sunshine House and all of the folks made that giant, really almost cock and balls looking thermometer to gauge the money that was coming in. Because I was very concerned that there wasn't going to be a thermometer, and I had to talk to Monique about it and be like, you have to I want to what's the point of donating money if I don't see you coloring in the little amount? And so I was there's some real telethon moments. I'm like Adrian. I was for sakes, I remember the calling, and everyone who's our age and a little bit older really thought that people were answering phones for real on that telethon because
pardon?
You guys weren't answering. That rotary dial was not connected to shit. Was it?
So there was 2 phones out and people were calling in.
But was it on screen? Was it on screen?
Yep.
Okay. Yep. All right.
Yeah, because you can actually hear at various points through when we're hosting, you can hear the phone ring. And the first time it rings, I actually get startled. And I'm just like, I thought we disconnected those. No, but even on real telethons, they weren't actually phoning in. They were doing cold calls, which is something I learned in the planning of this. So they were just cold calling. So people weren't actually phoning in all the time.
I don't want to know this. Do you, Adrian? I don't want to know this. I want to be like Jerry Lewis just had everyone's granny calling in. That's what was happening.
I don't know what words you're saying. What? I was today years old when you told me that. That is new to me.
Oh my God, the behind the scenes telethon information. I didn't need to know.
I think you should make that's your next special is the behind the scenes bloopers and secret information to the Sunshine House telethon.
Could you imagine a Sunshine House blooper reel though, y'all? What would that even be? It would be great.
Yeah, it'd be amazing. It'd
be so good.
Isn't everything we do a blooper reel?
That's why I'm interested. That should be one of your bingo themes, blooper reel. Drag.
No, because it's so offensive. Like it's so bad. Like if this is what we are actually proud to put out there, what's going on behind the scenes is only for our own eyes. We have to have some dignity.
That's right. Okay, fine. Keep some of the secret. I didn't want to know about the rotary phone not being connected to an actual phone line. So I guess we can leave some parts to the imagination.
No, but like to like salvage your dream. I don't want to be a total dream eater. You can you do in actual telethons. There's lots of people calling in, but for those moments where it looks like every operator is on the phone, some of those operators are doing cold calls.
Yeah, let me say. I feel like you should stop saying an actual telethon because I feel like you had an actual telethon. You raised a fuck ton of money. It seems like it was a for real legit telethon. Anyways. Except for a little bit more trashy, which I personally am more into anyways. Okay, let's talk. Maybe we don't even need to talk about vaccines, but let's talk. Are you guys having these conversations of what are we gonna do? What are you guys gonna do? Where are you at? What are you thinking? Even though it's so far away, I feel like it's in the same vein as winter is still here and we can't quite plan for spring, but we all do it anyways because we live in Winnipeg. I feel that way about vaccines, and so I'm wondering if you guys have things on your mind.
It's an interesting question. I mean, I've heard a lot of people. I mean, like I said, I've heard from a lot of people that they're excited about accessing the vaccine, which is good, really good. I definitely, I've been hearing less about vaccine hesitancy than I think a lot of people thought we would be hearing about. And again, what I'm hearing more about is access. People are really confused about how and when they can access the vaccine and trying to kind of line up their schedules for when it's going to be available to them. I feel grateful to be in a category of people, with the exception of, a couple of health conditions, pretty low risk, when it comes to negative outcomes with COVID-19. So just my focus is actually on encouraging other people as soon as it's available to get the vaccine and to answer those questions. But I mean, I'd be lying. I'd be lying if I didn't say that. Yeah, of course, there are things that I've been thinking about in terms of when we are collectively, through the thick of this. What are some things that we get to enjoy? And I certainly relate to what everyone's sentiments have been in terms of missing community tremendously. Yeah. That for me it's been a big loss. Actually, it's been almost like I don't want to minimize the significance of the word grief or grieving, right? But it's been a loss. It's been a big loss the last year of not being able to connect that way with community. Speaking specifically to queer community, it's kind of, and I've had these conversations with a few folks, and they're very cherished conversations about what happens for folks in targeted communities when you don't have those connections as easily accessible or in the ways that are really meaningful to you. And so I really do look forward to being able to connect with community members again, and just share some of the simple, silly stuff that we do.
I didn't take issue with what you said, Margaret, to open up this question, because it's I think that, but this season that we're in right now, and even if we're looking at it in the COVID sense of where you can't plan for what's going to happen, I think that you have to. I think it's actually, from where I come from, it's actually a necessary thing. To do at this time when it's messy and it's muddy and it's gross. This time is actually super sacred, because it's time that we can harvest things. It's time when the earth starts to open up again, and it's time when we can start and we can gather and we can come back together. And I think that that's an awesome, really interesting, if I lean on that kind of knowledge about the season change, that really helps me get to where we're going to go in a future time, because we know that the future isn't certain. but you have to be able to plan and you have to be able to prepare. And I think, yeah, like that's just how I've been approaching everything probably since December, is like, just take that time and just like plan and get excited. And you're allowed to allow yourself to when new things or something excites you, be extra excited about it, because you've just gone through winter, and winter is really hard, and winter is a good time for telling stories and for creating bonds within your close circle. But now you can expand and like like animals, that's their rutting season, so they'll start looking for new mates. So that's an exciting thing. Maybe some of us will get laid again. I don't know. I'm not sure. But I think we absolutely should be really, really excited about this time, and we shouldn't be hindered about the idea of time, because time is always going to be a constraint if you allow that to happen. So I think looking at the wound that we have, that many of us have from not being able to connect for so long, because this was a super harsh winter, looking at that wound, we're allowed to also look at that and be like, yes, this was very painful, and there's probably going to be some scars, and it's probably going to be something that we're going to carry with us for the rest of our lives. That's also okay.
Whew. Levi.
What a beautiful analogy. We've called it so much, and like a wound and healing and pain is such a good analogy. I think I'm taking everything in small bits of excitement, I think, because there's still so much uncertainty about when different groups of people can access the vaccine and what that looks like going forward. I don't think, I'm tying it. I know everybody's like, I'll be able to travel again and I'll be able to do this. And so my realism around that is, that's still a long, far way off. And so the wound and the healing piece for me is that my family is in different parts of the world. And so the travel for me is not, selfish vacation travel. It's missing family and missing the connection to community that you were talking about, Uzoma. So I'm looking forward to like little bits where I can take it. So if that means, more walks with friends, or just being able to visit without so much emotional pressure on somebody's front porch because, suddenly some of the restrictions are loosened a bit. Like those are huge wins emotionally. I also had this weird moment of reckoning in the past, or awakening in the past couple of weeks, that like specifically at work, like we were such a intense nucleus of people who worked through the entire pandemic and didn't work from home and didn't take breaks. And like, these are people who were around me who essentially became my family. It's still in that work way, but like these are people who like we just powered through all of this together, and we're bonded because of that. And it's a really weird place, because now we're coming into spring and we're feeling that awakening, and we're going through different things and realigning and restructuring and doing all this stuff like professionally, like in all of our jobs, I think. But that what got us through the last year to be able to go through some of the hardest and most uncertain, and tears and laughter and all those pieces, like these are people who maybe I wouldn't have had that experience with had we not gone through a pandemic. So I'm kind of having that introspective moment these past couple of weeks, and I think that comes with the weather getting nicer, and that awakening happening, like you said, Levi, with the earth, but also internally. So just trying to grasp those little bits where I can take them right now.
Man, I love it. And also thinking about all the stuff, like I think about the stuff that we've all done this past year, and I'm just very hopeful that we're able to take some of it with us. Like there's been a lot of really, like some of the pivots that we've pulled off, like our shit that I was like, I've been talking about for like whatever. I'm like old. Like I've been talking about doing shit this way for a long ass time. And then suddenly we were able to pivot, and it was suddenly okay to do things the way we've always known that they should be done. And so I think like thinking about that more, and like learning and making sure we keep stuff, like if we're doing like safe supply, if we're giving people who are in isolation a safe supply of opiates so that they can maintain their isolation, then like what is the plan for safe supply once we don't have these isolation units? Like, how are our physicians going to start taking care of people because our poison drug supply is not changing, you know? Like, so thinking about like all of the things, like these little things that we're doing because we needed to respond to a pandemic, but actually that are the correct, right, ethical thing to do. How do we like bring that forward with us and like keep that momentum a little bit? You know, I just really want to see the world look a little different when we're kind of through this, you know? I don't want to go back to what it was because that wasn't good. And so I always just want to like keep thinking about what could be, you know? That's what I'm excited about. I'm also excited to go outside, see my mom and dad, and not have them like freak out about the fact that we haven't had a meal together in a year. Like, settle down. It's okay. It's just fucking roast beef, you know? Like, we've done other things. So I don't know. This is what's kind of, and I also want people to come to my house. I moved in this pandemic. Like, I freaking, like, my entire life changed and it was shitty. And I moved and I have this cute house. I just really want people to come into it and like, let me like make you fancy drink and like sit in the backyard. Anyway, these are the things that I'm hopeful about. Yeah. As an extrovert who found out she was an extrovert this year. Thanks. Okay. Anyways. Alrighty. So it is like 10 to 8. Is there anything else?
That was not a new discovery this year.
Levi, listen, it wasn't a new discovery for any of you motherfuckers, but I am not always like in tune with my business. So it's like, I'm just like an extroverted introvert. Like, I had that fucking attitude, which is nonsense. Pure nonsense. What was I thinking? What was I thinking? It only took a pandemic for me to be like, nope, I for sure get energy from other people. Anyway, here we are. No, no one's surprised but me. Fine, whatever. Okay. Do you guys have anything else?
I get so fascinated by the things that we tell ourselves and we just like take in and we believe so fervently that it just becomes so part of our identity. And I'm just like, how did you ever believe? Like, how did you ever spend 5 minutes in the internet age where you can reflect on what you're putting out to the world and think that you are an extrovert or an introvert?
And you know what else I tell myself? That I'm super self-aware. So, you know, enjoy that moment in time also. I'm like, I know everything. I'm totally in tune. I get it all. Whatever, you know. It's weird. But I do have I tell a good story. I can spin a good yarn, as you know. So, you know, are we that surprised that I'm telling myself a story that I wanted? Because it was like not cool to be an extrovert. There was that point in the early 2000s where it was like edgier.
I don't know. Like, you don't also strike me as an emo person. I don't understand where any of this is coming from.
I know. Okay, Levi, you're right. You're right about everything. I know. Oh, you're not. You're right about this right here. You
need to apologize to the early 2000s for put respect on early 2000s name, Maggie. That was
low.
Come on now.
Yeah, I also don't get that characteristic. Like, yeah.
I have no concept of time. Wasn't the early 2000s like 5 years ago? Like, I have no concept of time.
It was last year, girl.
I'm gonna put Mariah Carey on and pretend like I don't know what we're talking about.
Anyways, all right. Okay, it's devolving. We got to sign off before shit gets even more. I'm gonna stop.
This is when it gets really good.
The last 10 minutes. Like, all right, here we go. Okay. Anything else that folks want to like shout out about? Oh my gosh. And then in the comments, only an extrovert would worry if it's cool or not to be an extrovert. I mean, that's accurate. The most true thing. Thanks, Shondell. All right. I appreciate all the comments, everyone. Super loving it. Okay. I think we should wrap it up, though, unless you guys have anything else you want to add this week.
I dropped off some cupcakes at a friend's whose birthday it was right before I came here. And they have a 5-year-old named Kelmsley who was like, their mom said, oh, Adrian's going to be on COVID Convos. And he's like, oh my gosh, I love watching that show. You're going to be on COVID Convos. So I was like, because they're beautiful educators in their house and they watch things like this all together as a family, you know. And so, yes, I just wanted to shout out that was a really cool moment on the way here tonight. Yeah. On the way to my house. That's what I meant by on the way here. On the way to my house.
Yeah, we're not together, everyone. We're very separate. Oh my goodness. Also in the comments, Jenny Henkelman says, Maggie is correct, but it was about 10 years ago that extroverts became much maligned. So you're right, Uzoma. I should be kinder to the early 2000s. It was more around 2010. So that's fine. So there you go.
Yeah.
Okay. Well,
yeah, like that makes sense to me too. That timeline is correct.
listen, I'm not about the facts. I'm about the feelings. Have you ever met me? Come on now. Anyways, close enough.
Yeah,
and there's people in the comments. There's people in the comments that help us with the dates and the timelines. So I appreciate everybody. All right. Okay. We're done. It's really nice seeing you guys. Carry on. Anything else, Levi?
I just think that there's like the COVID Convos 2 that's coming up. That's on the 25th. Uzoma? I think so, yeah, on the 25th. And it's going to be a good one. It's going to be timely and topical, and it's going to have all of it's going to have a further discussion. Huh?
Who's going to be there? What's the story? Who's doing it?
Uzoma's going to be there. Johnny's
I know that.
Okay. And I don't know who the other guests are yet. We're still, we're still in this. So this is one of the things about COVID that's going to be really shitty is that I'm going to have to start planning way better when we can reconvene things, because now I'm just used to putting on an event knowing that nobody's doing anything. So it's like, oh, I'm just going to put this out tomorrow and people are actually going to show up. But now it has to go back to like doing things where you have to like actually put effort into proper marketing. And thank God Jenny's around because it's not my forte.
It's a hard life being timely. And you're right. We haven't had to do that at all. I'm always like, sure, name your hour, name your time, whatever. Let's do it. Yeah.
I'll have to go back to those guilty text messages of, oh, you did an early show last night and I didn't even find out about it until today. It's like, yeah, I'm sorry, because the advertisement for our drag show went out on Thursday at midnight. Sorry you didn't catch it for our Friday show. Stay tuned.
I'm available for a 2 p.m. IG message any day. Okay?
Woo!
I'm your girl.
I appreciate that.
Late messages, no commitment. That's me.
I hope we can keep some of that from COVID. Like, yeesh, I would like that kind of. That's an excellent response. All right, now it's my fourth time of trying to shut this thing down. So shall we do it for real? All right. Good night, everybody. It was really freaking lovely chatting with all of you. And carry on. And thanks for all the comments. We love seeing you guys in the comments, and we love being able to chat about this stuff, and we're happy to be able to be here and to be together and to be okay and to do a gay thing once in a while, because it's pretty fucking queer. So we're gonna just carry on. Okay, good night, everyone.